Welcome to the Law Firm Growth Podcast, where we share the latest tips, tactics, and strategies for scaling your practice from the top experts in the world of growing law firms. Are you ready to take your practice to the next level? Let's get started.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Law Firm Growth Podcast. And I'm super excited to discuss one of the topics that's been coming up a lot for us with Dina Eisenberg, who is the CEO of Outsource Easier. So we have a lot of stuff. I mean, obviously when we're coming on the marketing side of things, we run up with people that are having different styles of, sometimes their business is a little bit in disarray. Sometimes their business ends up growing and they don't know what to do. But basically at some point, especially for people that are solo practices, this is an option that might be really, really, really useful. And Dina is one of the best experts on it. So thank you for coming on the show, Dina.
Oh, Jan, I'm so excited to be here. I love talking about delegation and outsourcing. And, I'm on a mission to change the way that lawyers practice so it becomes easier. So happy to be here.
All right, awesome. We usually get started with a little bit of the background story. And I happened to hear yours when we were together in the Law Firm Growth Summit last year. You've got an awesome story. Would you mind sharing it with the guests?
I'm delighted to do that because I think my experience is so unique, actually not unique to me, are so common. And I don't think people recognize how easy it is to get into the trouble I did. So, I was running a six-figure business. My husband was running $1 million business. Really, the kind of thing that you dream about when you're thinking about the entrepreneurial dream. So we traveled extensively. When my daughter did her study abroad in Madrid, I had to go to check it out to make sure it was safe. She was eating well. I had an opportunity to build my dream house from scratch. Total gut renovation, all the things that you want to do that you work so hard for when you have your own business. And so I thought we were just going to be fine forever. I learned how to delegate when I was the vice president at Bank of America. I was the corporate ombudsman, and I served about 60,000 people across the United States. And used to doing everything myself because I'd run a small business. But my assistant basically gave me the come to Jesus talk. And she said, you are ruining our reputation, mine and yours, because you try to do my work. Stay in your own lane. You do all the high-level thinking and relating to people. I'll do all the administrative work. And so she taught me how she could be my partner, and I just never forgot that. So when I went back to private practice, I always had a team, but I could not convince my husband. He was so resistant. And it reminded me of so many lawyers that I knew. He would be like, well, why would I go ahead and train somebody to essentially take my job or spend money on something that I could actually do myself and save the money? And basically, I don't want to have any mistakes because my clients come to me for a specific reason. And that's because I'm good. I can't have any mistakes. So I can't hire anybody. And, those are all kind of excuses. But, when you're married to somebody who has their own business, you have to let them do their own thing. So he went on running his business his way. I went on running my business my way. One night, of course, he sneezed. Everybody sneezes. Well, this was a little bit different. He sneezed and ruptured 2 discs in his back. We rushed to the hospital, and basically the surgeon came out and told me if we don't operate in minutes, he's going to be paralyzed for life. So at that point, I was not thinking about the businesses at all. I was thinking, how can we help this person survive the surgery and come out the other side? Thankfully, he did. And he woke up the next morning. The surgery was a success, but he began a 2-year recovery period where literally he was like a toddler. He had to learn how to walk again, use the bathroom again, go up and down stairs. And that severely impacted our life because I needed to be his caretaker. So my business was able to continue because, I had a team in place and I could shift my focus to taking care of him. His business was gone in a week. Why? No team. His corporate clients would call up and say, well, where is the blah, blah, or the X, Y, and Z? And I just have to say, I don't know. I'm not part of this business. I can't help you. And while they were all sympathetic, They felt bad because they really liked him and he did do a great job. Every corporate client dropped him within a week. And they all said the same thing. You're unreliable because you don't have team. We can't trust you because there's no one to pick up the slack if you're not there. And I know for small firm owners and for solos, that is so true. So when you don't have a team to help you, what happens to your income? Does it just stop? What happens to your family? Do you put them in a dangerous, precarious position because you decided you didn't want to have somebody help you in a law practice? And so that really spurred me to open my shop and talk about my story and get lawyers past some of the obstacles that we face in terms of outsourcing and delegating.
Yeah, I mean, such a powerful story. And it's kind of interesting. Like, hopefully that people, I mean, I'm definitely looking at a box of tissues on my desk right now and wondering, maybe I'm going to have the sneeze representative. Hopefully not. But again, obviously it was a super tough situation that happened to your husband. But, there's also, not to say like people have to get this set up in case they have calamity. But on the flip side, sometimes you ask people, when's the last time you had a vacation? Those are the other, I guess, the positive side of things. But it's kind of interesting because it looks like, a lot of people end up going into solo practice because they're trying to avoid the whole golden handcuffs situation with a job. But, it turns out they're trading one set of handcuffs for another if they're personally responsible for the deliverables.
Absolutely. And, it's hard to do a great job when you're personally responsible for everything. And the truth of the matter is your family did not decide to go into business. They just decided to love you, and you decided that you wanted to have a law practice, which is actually a business. So when you're not taking care of those things that help the business run smoother and make it more productive and profitable, in some ways you're kind of cheating your family. My story ends in divorce because we just couldn't agree on what was more important. And I would hate for other people to get in that position where they're stressed about money, they're stressed about the time away, and it, ruins one of the primary, most important relationships they have.
Right. And, obviously things can get to the point where it's that bad, but I'm sure there's a lot of people who are walking around right now that have maybe a ticking time bomb like that in their life. So what do you usually see as the signs of when somebody should start considering this stuff?
It's so funny because lawyers are kind of like looking for a bat sign, looking in the sky, like, is there going to be a sign? Sorry to say, there's no bat sign. If you are asking the question, like, is it time for me to outsource? It is time. And here's how I come to that conclusion, which is, we all have our lizard brain, the part that says, don't do that, you're going to get in trouble, or that's going to hurt you. When you're asking yourself, is it time to outsource? That part of your brain has recognized that you are already overwhelmed. And it's saying, like, we kind of need some help. Could you think about that for a minute and get us some help? So if that question comes up, some part of you is all ready to outsource. One of the other things to consider is, are you missing things? So are you dropping dates on the calendar? If you haven't billed in like 3 months? Those are important things. And if those are getting overlooked in your practice, you're putting your practice in jeopardy. So if you're not doing things in the practice like billing, or you're spending too much time on admin work so that you don't have enough time to bill, then it's really time to start thinking about what can I bring on to take over some things like intake or calendaring or billing clients, because all of those things are going to contribute to increasing your revenue and reducing your stress. So that's another sign. If you're avoiding things, it might be time to turn that over to somebody else. And the last one I would note is, are you missing opportunities? So if you can't go out and be on a bar association committee and lead the committee because you can't be away from the office, you're missing a golden opportunity to demonstrate your expertise and network with other lawyers in your community. So if you're finding that you're saying no to things that you should be saying yes to, or that you just want to say yes to, it's really time to think about, okay, what can I take off my plate and put on somebody else's plate so that now I have free time to engage in these practice building activities.
Yeah, that's really interesting because it seems like on some level, People always kind of look at, it seems like the stuff that you can see above the surface. So it's like, oh yeah, well, why would I pay somebody $15 an hour to answer my phones? That's kind of like the tip of the iceberg. And the area that's below is that opportunity cost you mentioned. Because it's like, look, if you're leading that bar organization meeting, and that's the next source of your $15,000 or $20,000 client that's coming through the door from a referral, then you're missing out so much. But to kind of dig into that a little bit more. So we mentioned a couple different things: billing, follow-up, intake, that kind of stuff. How does somebody decide what they want to outsource? And is that answer different for different people?
Great question. So the thing that you want to do when you're deciding to outsource or delegate, and the two things are actually different. So I'll just take a second to make the distinction. Outsourcing is the umbrella idea. It's the idea that you're going to ask somebody either inside or outside of your practice to help you achieve a goal. And it's that simple. It's just asking someone to help you achieve a goal. Delegation is the next step, where you are deciding what to delegate and then preparing that person that you selected to do the best job possible, just to get those two things out. Now, what are you going to delegate? The things that you don't like to do is a great place to start, right? So usually folks want to just jump right in and delegate everything. And I think that's kind of a bad idea, because initially you're going to have to learn the process of delegating effectively. You're going to have to learn how to select the right person. So your first couple of things that you're delegating need to be low risk. You don't want to have your practice blow up because you picked the wrong thing or the wrong person. So really low risk tasks. That's why I think, having a firm Lex reception, which is a answering service, answer your phone is a great way to begin to delegate, right? Because they already have a system for doing it. You're just plugging into their system and understanding it, and they're getting the benefit back of that time of not being on the phone with maybe tire kickers that you can put back into your practice. So I always recommend low risk but valuable tasks. So not something that's fluffy that you don't care about, something that you actually need to get done. And here's a little tool that folks can use to figure that out. So if you just, take out a piece of paper and quickly fold it into fours, like when you were in fourth grade, and you label each corner differently. So it's weekly, monthly, daily, and quarterly. And then write down everything you do on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, and on a quarterly basis. What you're probably going to find out is that your daily and weekly boxes are slammed, just jam full of stuff. There's very little on your monthly, and there's probably nothing on your quarterly.
Right.
Look at some of the daily and weekly things and think about, well, is this something that I have to do that requires my expertise or my personal attention? If not, it goes on to the list of something to delegate.
Okay, awesome. So that's an awesome place to start. And it's kind of interesting because I think an exercise like that, and anyone who's in that position of listening should absolutely go ahead and do that. It sounds like, pretty impactful for figuring that stuff out. So my next question is, I'm sure a lot of people are bought into this concept and they understand the value that can have. But one of the things, and this is true of any business and any service that one can consider, is, that really sounds awesome, Dina, but I just can't afford that. So what do you say to somebody who doesn't have the money or doesn't have the time? And I think usually what the place people are trying to think of is maybe hiring somebody full time, but are there steps that people can take before that to maybe make it a little easier of a transition?
Absolutely. If I had a quarter for every time somebody said to me, I can't afford to outsource, I'd have my own private island, right?
Yeah.
I would be relaxing in the sun, because everybody thinks that's true. But here's the thing. First, you don't necessarily have to hire somebody full-time, and I actually recommend that you start at a part-time, 5 hours a week bringing somebody in, because it's a process you have to learn. Secondly, let's just talk about the cost of it. We imagine that it's so expensive without actually doing the research to find out and considering how much return you're going to get from that, right? So I have a client who it took me, I want to say almost a year to convince her to start bringing on a paralegal to delegate some of the work to, because for her practice area was very dear to her. She really didn't want anybody else to be involved in doing the work and felt like, she wanted to do it all herself. But eventually I wore her down.
Right.
And she got a paralegal. Now, she brought this person in for just 5 hours a week. The paralegal cost her $35 an hour, but she was able to bill this person out at $150 an hour. That's because you're entitled, according to the ABA rules, to bill out a paralegal who does substantive legal work for you at a rate that's near your own, right? So she's paying $35, she's billing this person out at $150, and she gets her own time back to work on other legal matters, to actually practice law. So it actually ends up being a profit-generating activity when you hire the right paralegal, you train them well, and then you let them do their work. So she got 5 hours back of her time that now she could bill out again, and she got the paralegal doing what she needs to do to grow the practice. So if you're saying, like, I can't afford it, really start looking at the numbers. And here's another perspective to look at that from. So I want to ask you, can you afford a bar complaint because you failed to meet a court date or forgot to get back to a client? You know, the number one reason that clients file bar complaints is non-responsiveness. And, you know, some lawyers are just too busy to maybe keep that client updated, but you can use a paralegal to keep that person updated. So which is less costly, the bar complaint, where now you have this record of your malfeasance, or maybe don't want to say definite malfeasance, but possible malfeasance? You now have to hire a lawyer. You have to go before defend yourself before the bar. Or is it less expensive to actually just hire somebody who can help you and put some hours back in your time so you can manage your calendar? And it doesn't always have to be that you're hiring somebody. It actually can be tools, right? So when I say help you achieve a goal, there are apps that could help you keep your clients informed, like Case Status. Anybody who knows that app knows that it's a way for your clients to get their questions answered, which is something the clients love to call and talk to you about. Well, you can delegate that task to the app and have that person check the app to find out what the status of their case or what documents they need to provide for you or the next step in their matter, right? So that you don't have to do it, but it does get done. So if you're thinking you can't afford it, I'm really encouraging people to think about, well, if you don't, what will the cost be to you? And likely the cost is going to be greater than the amount of money that you're going to spend to get the help.
Yeah. I mean, a knowledge bomb just went off in my head, Dina, when you brought that up, because, when you're thinking about the paralegal and the ability to build that in a rate that's close to your own, maybe this isn't a question of whether, you can afford this paralegal. Maybe it's the question of, can my clients afford this paralegal? They're going to be billing the hours anyway. So that's a decision that they've already made. So, that seems like a win all around, because it's, at the end of the day, if you're having a better service, I don't think clients want to work with somebody who's kind of like stretched over a barrel from a time perspective any more than anyone wants to be stretched over a barrel. So, that's
exactly right.
Stuff. Yeah. So another quick question. So as far as the part-time stuff goes, I mean, this kind of goes to something that I've kind of seen some trends in the area, or in the industry rather. But this whole question about having somebody, does this necessarily need to be somebody in your office, or is this somebody that you could potentially have from a remote worker, or somebody within state, or maybe within even the same country?
You can have a remote worker. In fact, I encourage people to look at remote or virtual paralegals as a way to begin to get into the process, right? Because some folks, if it's an in-person paralegal, they worry, I don't have the office space, or now I have to buy a computer for this person, and it's additional overhead that I really don't want. Well, you can use a virtual paralegal service. They're, again, already set up to help you do whatever it is that you need to do. Usually, if you're using a virtual paralegal service, it's a number of paralegals under one umbrella. And so you might be able to use, one paralegal to do your intake, another one to do your billing, another one to do legal research for you. So you're getting access to many more professionals. If you're using a virtual team. And, you don't have that overhead of having to bring somebody in. The thing to recognize, though, if you're using a virtual team, is onboarding is the same as if the person was in your office. Sometimes lawyers are like, well, they're virtual. I really don't need to spend any time training them. And that would be a mistake, because just like a in-person paralegal, your remote paralegal knows how to do their job for sure, but they don't know how to do it for you. And so it's on you to spend some time onboarding them, which means providing an orientation day, helping them understand their job and your expectations, and then spending about 3 months training them into doing the role. Because it takes at least a year for someone to be very competent at their role. But at 3 months to 6 months, that's when you're beginning to see the return on your investment, which is, about $2,000+ per hire. So you really want to spend the time to onboard that person, whether they're remote or in person. But yeah, remote is a great way to start.
Yeah. One question that kind of came up while we're talking about that is sort of, are there cons to hiring remote as far as where you want to go? Because I mean, I'm just kind of imagining the people who might be thinking, well, all right, it's great if we have somebody who's part of a team, but what happens when I need to, scale up and potentially hire that person full time? Is that something you can do with these services, or would they have to eventually transition as somebody, full time and in person?
The remote or virtual paralegal services that I have worked with offer packages in terms of hours, so that if you need more hours, you can scale up with them. And what I like about having be part of an agency is they already know your practice. Right? So you're using them for 5 hours, things go great, now you're using them for 20 hours. And it's, your training time is cut down because they know your systems, they know what you like, and how to manage your clients well for you. Not to say that having an individual or a independent online or virtual paralegal is bad. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that I like to advise my clients to work with an agency that has many folks, so they get as many resources without having to spend more effort or time.
So yeah, these have all been super good tips, Dina. So a quick question, and maybe I'm putting you on the spot right here, but I don't think I am, because you're a really great storyteller. Are there any just great success stories that come to mind as far as somebody, and let's think about somebody who's potentially listening to this podcast, a smaller solo business owner potentially who might be thinking, this is really resonating with me. I've listened 25 minutes into this podcast so far. Do you have any stories that would kind of describe an outcome, a great outcome that's happened for somebody like that?
Sure. I've been lucky enough to have clients who are open to making the change they needed to make in their practice and really embraced outsourcing and onboarding. So I'm thinking of one particular client who has a really unique kind of niche practice. And because it's niche, he really felt like he had to do everything. He was in his email for hours a day, so moving documents around and preparing for his clients. And he neglected the other parts of his business. So he wasn't billing at all. And worse than that, he would sign clients and then they'd never pay. So they'd sign the contract, but they didn't pay. So we were able to walk through all of his work and really figure out what is going to be the most useful things for you to delegate in terms of increasing your revenues to the bottom line. So we figured out, okay, you have to stop looking at the email all the time. It's not useful for you. And really it was what I would call junk food. The tasks that we do when we want to feel busy, but we're not actually busy. So it was his junk food, and he just kind of got into a place where it made him feel more comfortable to be doing that work. So we were able to get him to stop doing that, find a paralegal who was in his niche. So he had a lot of comfort with her because he didn't really have to explain what he was doing. She immediately got his practice and went right ahead, not only helping him, but actually improving the practice by putting in better systems. And then we were able to encourage him to think about, the back end of his practice, like when are you getting paid and what happens when you don't get paid? Because he'd had clients who literally were clients on paper for months, but they never taken the next step to actually send the payment. And he was too busy to actually ask them to pay. So, okay, well, let's just get you a billing clerk. Because he was very clear that it wasn't his favorite thing. And part of what I do with my clients is help them recognize things that they don't like to do, that maybe they don't want to admit. But then once you get that clarity and accept that about yourself, it's easier to have somebody else do the work. So he didn't like calling clients to follow up and say, hey, you signed the contract, can you send the payment? That felt demeaning to him. So he just didn't do it.
Yeah.
And when the longer that you have that money waiting out there, the less likely you're going to get it.
Mm-hmm.
So, we got him a billing clerk, and literally within the first week, she got him 10K.
Wow.
Why? The person that he had not been calling, she called up and said, "Oh, I'm brand new. I noticed that you've signed your contract, but we don't necessarily see the payment. Can you take care of that this week?" Boom. Sure enough. Done. So 10K. And I was like, okay, now you see the value of having somebody else do that work for you, right? You got that money without you having to follow up at all with that client. And that wasn't the only client she was reaching out to. So he expects to have his revenues increase significantly over the next few months because he was able to recognize the things that he didn't like to do himself, accept that about himself, and then go out and find teammates who could make it happen for him.
Yeah, that's incredible. It's kind of an interesting dilemma as well, because I think there's almost a built-in assumption for the person who wants to do everything is that the assumption is that you're the best person at everything. But I think if people really have the clarity to kind of look at themselves and say, hey, look, I mean, this is the other thing too. It's like, as far as the systems you mentioned, which she was able to improve, he might not have been a systems guy in addition to a billing guy. So the fact is people have natural talents. I guess it's just kind of connecting the dots between what you like and what you don't like and how that kind of maps into scaling that can be super helpful.
That's absolutely true. And the point that you make about expertise is really kind of critical, because if you have to spend the time to learn something before you do it, that's wasted time. You can never build that, right? I'd much rather hire somebody who already knows how to do it. That's less time that I'm investing in this project, and I'm going to get a better outcome at the end.
Yeah, exactly. It's like people, you invested in your JD to do the law, there's no point in going ahead and becoming an expert at harassing people for being a bill collector at the same time, right?
Yeah, it was a very expensive investment too. So you have to protect that.
Yeah. So yeah, if this is resonating with people on any level, what's like the best way, I guess, any next steps or best ways to get in touch with you or look into this stuff a bit further, Dina?
Sure. I would, love to touch base with people and help them figure this out. They're more than welcome to join my Facebook group, which is Train Your Perfect Paralegal. And if they head over to my website, which is outsourceeasier.com, they can grab a video of the 3 signs that it's time to outsource.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess further cementing what we were talking about earlier, if it will, I guess, first thing, if there's any doubt, there's no doubt. But if this is resonating with you, you made it this far, absolutely go ahead and check that out. Dina, thank you so much for the time. It's been a really fascinating conversation. And I hope anyone out there that's listening, if this is speaking to you, don't go another month living stretched over that barrel. There's a better world out there.
That's right. Be intentional about building the practice that you really want and that works for you, because that means that you're going to be able to do what you promised to do when you became a member of the bar, which is to serve your clients well.
All right. Well, I don't think I can finish off better than that. So thanks again, Dina. And for the rest of y'all, I'll speak to you next week on the Law Firm Growth Podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Law Firm Growth Podcast. For show notes, free resources, and more, head on over to casefuel.com/podcast. Looking forward to catching up on the next episode.